This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
And it was really, I guess, one of those moments of universal surrender in the respect that for about a decade, when I had my son, he's almost 9, but when I was pregnant with him, I can remember distinctly like looking at my belly and feeling it and going, oh, if this baby wasn't mine, how would I feel? Would I be able to grow the baby and give birth and have this experience for someone else and not get too attached? And I thought, yeah, I reckon I could do this. Of course, you never know till you actually do it, but thankfully my instincts were right and I could.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. Get ready to hear moments that will help you to see the world differently and inspire you to become the happiest, healthiest, and kindest version of you. Today on the Things You Can't Unhear podcast, I welcome Lisa Messenger and Sarah Megginson. Many of you will know Lisa as the powerhouse disruptor in business and the founder of the Collective Hub, as well as the author of dozens of books, which I have devoured over the years. She has been known as the entrepreneur for entrepreneurs and has helped so many of us on our own business journeys. But this journey we talk about today in this episode is one of a very different angle. Today we share her personal journey to becoming a mother and the inspiring pathway it took her to finally get there after many, many, many years and 18 grueling rounds of IVF, which she kept private for so long. Lisa joins me today with Sarah, her wonderful, beautiful friend, and also the person who selflessly offered to be the surrogate for her baby, Hugo, who is now 1 year old, and he's absolutely divine. If you're curious about Lisa and Sarah's personal surrogacy story, you're going to love this special episode. Now, the ladies have also co-written a book called The Power of Two, which documents their journey, and we talk about it in this episode today as well. If you want to get your copy and hear more about this life-changing act of love, click the link in the show notes. Now, make sure you listen right till the end when I ask Lisa her things you can't unhear moment. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Welcome, Lisa Messenger and Sarah Megginson, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thank you. It is great to be here.
Lisa, you've been on before many, many years ago when I first launched this podcast, but Sarah, it's your first time. And you know what? It's so great, Lisa, that you continuously share your life with other people. I think it's such a special gift. A lot of people are very private in the way that they move and in the way that they change their lives around. But I love that you share so much of yourself for others. And that's generally why we do it, isn't it? When you're sharing your life in this way.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I share too much, but here we are again. Thank you. I learned many years ago that if I was strong enough to, go through adversity, share the lessons learned, and in doing so help other people and have a great catharsis for myself, then it was well worthwhile.
Amazing. And Sarah, have you always shared a lot of your personal life over the years, or is this something quite new to you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I've never had like the platform like Lisa has. So I've always been an open book, but I'm sharing to, my 12 friends, not thousands of strangers. But I've always been really behind the scenes. I've been a ghostwriter and I've been editing books for people. I've been more used to helping other people refine their stories than sharing so much of my own. So kind of being in the spotlight, talking about such personal things is probably a bit newer for me.
Yeah. How are you enjoying that?
I mean, I love it. I'm a journalist. I'm like professionally nosy. So I love hearing other people's stories. What I love most is when we share and talk about the things we've been through, like other people open up and share their experiences and their stories. And I can't get enough of that. So it's been really amazing.
That resonates with me a lot. Now, together, and I preface this in the intro, which you wouldn't have heard, but you have both brought a beautiful...
I feel like everyone needs to see Munchie quickly. Oh, little ad break. See you guys. Sorry.
All right, so I'll preface this in the intro, which you two probably wouldn't have heard, but together you brought an amazing little human into the world. His name is Hugo, and he just actually happens to be quite gorgeous, guys. I can't believe how gorgeous that child is, just quietly.
I know. I feel like, I don't know if you're doing visuals, but I feel like can Hugo say a quick hello
Yeah.
on the podcast
Can
since we're
we
talking
have
about
visuals? We have a YouTube version of this. So we would love to say hi to Hugo if he's still there.
The weirdest thing is Hugo and I so often dress the same, and I had a sleep in this morning when Stephen took Hugo out. We're currently in Bondi and we're wearing exactly the same outfit again. Come say hi, buddy. Hello. Oh, you're ready for sleepy?
We want to see your matching denims. Hi, Hugo. I've seen so much of you, but never met in person. How are you?
There's Andy. I know, he's growing up.
Oh my gosh, those jackets are too cute. Hey, Papa.
Do you mean the matching, Lisa, or does it just happen when you're like,
No, it just happens. It just happens. So, and if you looked at Stephen, he's also matching. All right,
Yes.
matching.
Well, it makes sense, really. I used to do that with my kids. You look into your wardrobe and you're like, okay, it's 20 degrees. It might need be a bit of a denim jacket kind of day. And then you're choosing the clothes for your child and you're like, oh, it makes sense. And before you know it, you're all a tribe that are perfectly matching. No, he's so gorgeous. So congratulations on this incredible human that you've collectively brought into this wonderful world that we live in. How's the first year? So he's now 1, right?
He's 14 months, 3 days, 26. No, 26 minutes and 4 seconds. Yeah, he's 14 months. He was born on the 22nd of October, 22nd of July, 2020. Oh my God, 2023. I'm doing that. I'm watching him go out the door. Now I can focus. Yeah, he's 14 months.
He's 14 months. And how's the first 14 months of his life been for you? Because obviously there's a whole story that we're going to tap into before Hugo was born. How's this first year panned out and what has it meant for your life?
Well, it's been extraordinary. I mean, he is the greatest gift, that I have ever had. And it is just, he's like the most perfect little human, but maybe I say that because it took 8 years to get him. But honestly, we just feel so lucky all the time. He's really healthy. He's got a huge personality, which has been getting huger the last few months. So it's been phenomenal. And, there's the mum life thing about sometimes it's like, I think the biggest change for me has been I've had my own business for 23 years and I've always worked, and work has always been my passion and my driving force and my identity. And I think that is a massive change, suddenly going, oh, my entire world is you now, which has been phenomenal. And took a bit of adjusting, but it was a very conscious choice. Like he is my world and I want to put business absolutely on the back burner for a while. Early on, we had a little bit of help. This year we've chosen to have zero help at all, either from family or anyone else. So it means that either Stephen or I have been with Hugo 24/7 for the last year, really. So that's just been an adjustment, but I love it. Like I'm just sort of trying to shed the business stuff at the moment and just be a present mama bear. Yeah, it's a huge change, but phenomenal.
And Sarah, how often do you get to catch up with Hugo, and what's your relationship with him like?
Oh, he's such a little munchkin. Our kids call him their brother cousin. It was a really good way for them to get around the idea that like mum was pregnant, but they weren't getting a sibling. And yeah, when he was first born, we made sure that we were down there like every couple of weeks to just, like the kids especially missed him, and made sure that we got to see him as often as possible. We now see like as often as life and logistics allow us to get together, we're together. But, Lisa's running a business. I'm working. We've got 3 kids. She's got 1 kid. It's I think any working parent knows, you want to see your friends more than you do. It is like the hardest juggle is to try and keep all the balls in the air. And in a perfect world, we'd see each other every weekend, but the world is imperfect.
Lisa's trying not to run a business. And we only live an hour and 15 minutes away. And I think Sarah and I probably text or DM or something kind of every day, but the dream is to have more time. And I think that's where we're excited to bring our second baby together into the world, which is the book, because it actually gives us an opportunity just to like spend a lot more time together, which we're both super excited about.
And I love that you say, I'm taking time off work, yet you are birthing this amazing book as well, which is so incredible. Some people would see that as a full-time job, and you're like, oh, that's just something that I'm doing.
But it's perspective, right? Yes. Yesterday, Stephen and I were chatting as we were driving to Sydney with Hugo, which we can get into. And it's so funny because I said to him, oh, it's kind of weird, like not working after 23 years. And he was like, baby, you are doing content creation and being a brand ambassador for lots of businesses. Sarah and I are putting this book out into the world. I'm writing another nonfiction, and I'm 40,000 words into a novel. I do speaking gigs like probably once a month.
You're working.
Now.
You're still
working. Lisa's definition of not working is not.
And I'm running. I just finished a retreat 4 days ago, and I'm running another one in November. But for me, that's not working. Yeah. So everything's perspective, right? Like, it's just, yeah. So Stephen reminded me, you kind of are working, but it's different because I've always had pretty big global businesses, and I don't have that. I've shared that. So yes, I'm still doing stuff, but it's not at the magnitude that I've done for so many years, I guess. So yeah, my definition of not working is different.
And I think potentially not having a team and staff to manage as well is probably the underlying huge factor.
Yeah, I think so, because that's the first time. I mean, I still have a lot of freelancers, but I have no physical team for the first time in 23 years. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, take us on this surrogacy journey and this book journey too, because who is the book actually for? When you sat down, decided, let's write a book about this experience that we have had, bringing Hugo into the world and the surrogacy journey and the fertility journey. What was the decision that was made around who this book was for and who it would impact the most?
Do you want me to go, Sarah, and then you can we'll probably finish each other's sentences anyway. So Sarah and I think when we started on this journey, we kind of nudged each other and we're like, there's a book in this. And then because that's our natural thing, right? Sarah has edited the majority of my books over we've known each other since 2011. So that's kind of our default. We are creators. We love storytelling. It's in our bones. So it was kind of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Of course, there's a book in this. And then Stephen, who is just in the background, is notoriously private. And so initially he was like, no, we can't share any of this journey. And it was only because of Sarah and my relationship and text exchanges, which Stephen read one night as we sat down over dinner, and he was like, let's go back to how this all evolved. And he read them and he just started crying, and he was like, oh my gosh, you have to share this. But going back to the question about who the book is for and why we decided to do it, because it is extraordinarily personal. And at times I was like, oh, I just don't want to talk about this. Like, finally, Hugo is here. I don't want to. But I know, and we know, that so many times people have either stopped me or us in the street and said they're going through fertility issues and like they're on their last legs. And then I tell them a bit of the story, and they're like, you can see their face light up and be like, oh, there's hope. So it's for anyone going through fertility struggles who, we really shed a light on every single part of the entire process. And there are many, many, many parts and iterations. But more so, it's for anyone who is experiencing any type of adversity and wants to lean into possibility and realize that actually when, you reach out and you're vulnerable and you ask for help or you offer help, extraordinary things can happen. And so it's much, much, much bigger than bringing a baby into the world or a surrogacy story. It's about the power of friendship and possibility and resilience and overcoming adversity and, all of those things. And really just the through line is the surrogacy journey, but I think it's so much more than that. And we really hope that it will have such a huge impact on anyone who's, needs a little bit of a pep in their step.
Mhm.
Oh, amazing. Sarah, did you want to add something to that from your
Yes.
perspective as well?
Plus one to all of that, but also Lisa and I, the way we process our worlds is through writing. Like it's been like that for me since I was a child. And Lisa has always been so generous in her books and what she shares because it's part of her processing experience as well. I always understand myself better once I have written about it and written through it. So I think both of us, before we'd even decided to write a book, both of us were kind of journaling and writing anyway, and just kind of processing our thoughts and our feelings through it. And this book is not just about our experience of bringing Hugo into the world. We talk a lot about, we go way back, and we talk a lot about both of our dads passing away and what those experiences were like. And we talk about, obviously a huge exploration into fertility and miscarriage and all of the different experiences we've had. And writing it is how I process and how I figure out how to move through things. And my hope and our hope is that when people read it, that it resonates with them and it helps them move through some of those feelings as well, and that they feel seen in the pages and that they kind of connect with those experiences, and it helps them process the experiences they've had as well.
I think they'll answer a lot of curiosity for other people as well that they have around this topic. And, so many of my friends and women that I know have sat around dinner tables and said, could you ever be a surrogate? Could you ever do that? How many times have you had these conversations? And there's always one that says, oh, totally would love to do that. Or under these conditions, absolutely not. Like, it's such an interesting topic. And I'd love to know how you, Sarah, came to the decision of saying it is such a selfless act that you have done. And I know the laws in Australia don't allow you to be paid for this as well. So it's something that you obviously wanted to do from some part of you.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that story and why you decided to.
Yeah. And exactly what you just said is right. I was the person, when this conversation would come up, I was the person sitting around the dinner table who would say, yeah, I think I could do it. Like, it always sat there in the back of my mind as, I think I could probably do this one day. And for me, I have 3 kids. Excuse me. For me, I have 3 kids, and I had a really easy fertility journey. All of my kids we wanted a child. We started trying, we had one. And so I always thought it was really unfair, like that we wanted kids and we had them, and other people want kids and, they desperately want a baby and they would make such good parents. Lisa would be such a beautiful mother, and it just wasn't happening for her, and it felt unfair. So I always kind of had this idea in the back of my head that I could be a surrogate for someone. And it was really, I guess, one of those moments of universal surrender, in the respect that for about a decade, when I had my son, he's almost 9, but when I was pregnant with him, I can remember distinctly like looking at my belly and feeling it and going, oh, if this baby wasn't mine, how would I feel? Would I be able to grow the baby and give birth and have this experience for someone else and not get too attached? And I thought, yeah, I reckon I could do this. Of course, you never know till you actually do it, but thankfully my instincts were right and I could. But I thought, yeah, I could do this. And so it was literally what you were talking about, one of those conversations with a girlfriend, with Lisa and I chatting, and she was doing IVF, and I said, how's it going? Oh, it's off to a slow start. It'd been about a year in by then. And I just said, if you ever want a surrogate, I could do that. But it was very early in Lisa's fertility at that, like IVF at that point. So she wasn't quite ready to have a surrogate then.
You're like an angel. Lisa, what was your reaction when Sarah first offered the surrogacy option to you?
So we've tried to piece through the timeline because there's so many things that Sarah and I have been through that have punctuated our relationship from the first time we met in 2011 when she walked into my office with her then 6-month-old Lila, to our dads both passing away 3 months from each other, to all sorts of things. So we're trying to work it out, and we think it was about 2018 when we had this conversation, and it was, yeah, as Sarah said, early on in my IVF journey. So I think I was kind of like, wow, that's, so generous and who would actually do that. And, really grateful, but also very much, no, I'm still on the journey. And I think it's really an important point because we all come to different decisions at different stages of readiness in our lives, and what works for one person is different for someone else. But just to put that in perspective, and we go into a lot more detail about it in the book, but I had previously been pregnant in 2015 and had a miscarriage with my previous relationship. We then broken up. That had given me the kind of, oh my gosh, I really want to be a mother. My career had always kind of come first, and I was one of those people who was like, oh, it'll happen, it'll happen. By the way, if someone's listening to that, don't wait, don't make the same mistake. And then 2016, I went to Bali to an orphanage and fell in love with this little baby called Gracie. And then I spent a long time trying to adopt her. Then I was single and I went through 2 rounds of IVF myself with a sperm donor. And then I met Stephen, and then he was like, oh, I really want to have a baby, but let's go naturally. So I went through that whole iteration. And then I had done, I don't even know, like a few rounds of IVF when Sarah had said that. So I was still very much on the journey of hope that I could get pregnant myself and carry my own baby. And there were several other iterations that we go into in the book around me trying lots of other things. And so it wasn't actually until 2020. Now I'm having trouble saying, I know you said the other day, 2022. That's and I connected again on this. And by then I was really ready. And that happened for a few reasons. I think my reserves had really run out. I was at the time helping with the flood crisis on the northern rivers. So I was quite vulnerable and around a lot of vulnerable people. And synchronicity and serendipity and just everything aligning, I happened to do a radio interview with Sarah's husband, David, one morning because I became a bit of a point person for the floods. I'd never met David. And Sarah texted me after and said, oh my gosh, you were just on the radio with my hubby. By the way, how's the IVF journey going? And this is all on text. And I think because of the timing, the situation that I found myself in that moment, my vulnerability and my kind of desperation, then I let my walls down and I just texted back and said, not great, still want to be a surrogate. And so that's how it happened. And that was 2022. And the rest is now beautiful history.
Your determination is so inspiring. I think when us women have the yearning to become a mother, there's nothing that's going to stop us, right? You just want to feel that yearning, and it can be done in so many ways now. We are so lucky. Like there's this option. I've just had 2 friends who have had IVF journeys on their own, and they're going to be single mums. So they've both, one's just had him, the other one's pregnant now. I've got another friend who's just had a surrogacy pregnancy in New York. It's just it's so incredible to see the way that we can creatively find other ways to become mothers. Like you said, adoption is also an option. I know it's very difficult, but how would you describe that feeling, both of you as mothers, to just need to feel that it's not, I don't want to call it a void, but the desire to love and nurture something or someone?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll start quickly and then Sarah can have the floor for a bit. But I think it is a great cliche, and pardon me, and now a cliche, I know for a reason, when people say you haven't felt anything until you're a mother. And I think literally for years, I just loved business, and I still love business. It takes a lot for me to like step away, but I just kind of put it on the back burner, which is sort of funny when I look back, because at school I did work experience. My first work experience was like working with kids. And then when I left school, I was teaching kids how to horse ride, and I always just loved children. But then, my career got in the way. But now I'm just like, oh my gosh, it is impossible to love any little human as much as Hugo, like just every little bit of him. But I think that's very purposeful now, being a mother as well, isn't it? Like when they're being crazy little munchkins, we're now calling him Turbo. He is so fast. The reason that they get away with so much because you just look at them and your heart melts and you're like, oh, whatever you do, you're just like, oh, just so squishable. Just love, 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 love. Yeah.
Wait till the teenage years is what I'm going through right now. Just like,
Yeah. Well, actually, yesterday we sat in a cafe and he threw a spoon so far it hit a woman at 3 tables over. So part of us are like, wow, we need to sign him up for an international baseball team. And then the other part of us is like, oh my God, how do you stop them from throwing things? Part celebration, part, oh my gosh, you did not
correct.
do that.
Correct. Exactly right. When I see how feisty my almost 13-year-old is, I'm like, this girl's going to run some type of big
Yeah.
corporation or some big company. She's going to have everyone in order and doing the right thing. Sarah, what about yourself? I mean, you've got 3 of your own. How old are they now?
Yeah, I've got almost 14, 11, and almost 9. And I find every phase of parenting is a new adventure. Like you kind of think, just need to get through this hump of, of nappies and naps, and we'll just get them into that new routine. And then you start the new routine and it's like a whole new world. It's a whole different thing. Every phase you go through, you're learning again in the new one. And I often say that to my eldest because, she's almost 14 and there's a lot of change that happens when they become teenagers. And we say to her all the time, we're learning this as well. We're not always going to get it right. So, she'll have big emotions about something and I can sometimes meet that energy. And I'll say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed that up, because we're still learning. We're learning this whole, like, I've never been a parent to a 13-year-old before. So I'm sorry, you're our big experiment. But I think, that's why I felt so drawn to being a surrogate, is because I think, I should say too, I think we're finally at a place in the world where it's actually really becoming acceptable and normal to not have kids if that's what your journey is, which I think is so great, because I think there has been so much pressure on women, especially once you get to a certain age. If you're not married and you don't have kids, there's that like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? As if your sole purpose is to get married and have kids. So I love that we now have a much more, there's just so much. It's like we talk about, there are so many different ways you can start a family. There are so many ways to live a vibrant and adventurous life, and they don't always have to have kids involved. And in that respect, I'm really grateful that we're moving in that direction in our kind of society. But for those who do want children, once you realize you do want a child, it's like, and once you have one and you realize that joy that it brings, it's just, like Lisa said, you can't really describe it. It can't really be replicated anywhere else. It is just this like divine moment of, oh my God, this is what it's like to have this connection. I obviously loved it so much, I did it 3 times. And that's why I did this for Lisa, because I thought if I can be the piece of the puzzle that helps this happen for another family, what an opportunity. Like, what an amazing thing to be a part of.
You articulated that so perfectly. Thank you so much. Now, I want to know now, what are the next steps? So you've said, yep, you know what? I want you to be a surrogate. I'm accepting your beautiful offer. I want to understand what the steps are for people who are tuning into this today and going, actually, this might be an option for us. How can we go about it, especially in Australia? Because I think I did some Googling on surrogacy before we jumped on, and I was like, this is a landmine of information. And there were all these different options. But in Australia, I'd love to hear what the steps were that you needed to take on the journey to get started.
Both sides, really. Like, Lisa, you can start with your side.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, different for everyone until it comes to the actual legalities and things. But for me, it was on my personal journey convincing Stephen, because I'd said a while before, my girlfriend Sarah has offered to carry a baby for us, but so I got to a point where I was kind of getting comfortable. But then it's about him, I mean, he'd had to get comfortable way back that we weren't going to have a baby naturally. Like he was determined, you know, that it is going to be us naturally. So he had to get to a point of, oh, we're going to do IVF, like, and all the different iterations that he had to get to. So that was one kind of going, this is Sarah, you know, and so they had to, you know, have a meeting, which we did over FaceTime while we were sitting by a pool somewhere. They met initially, and then he was like, oh my God, she's divine, what an angel. And so that was the first piece to get his head around it emotionally. And then there's a lot of pieces, because I think people go, oh, you just, you know, find someone to carry your baby, amazing, but you need to of course have existing embryos to put into said surrogate. And so the embryos can happen in a number of different ways. You know, these days it can be, you know, someone's sperm, someone's egg, but it could be a whole combination of different sperms and eggs, but you do need to have the embryo. And then the fertility clinic that you've got that embryo with needs to be on the path and understand the surrogacy journey. And then you kind of dig into the psychology part, where you need to, I think it's a prerequisite that you need to have all four parties, or however many parties are involved. In our case, it was four parties. It was Sarah and her husband, David, and then Stephen and I need to get together with a psychologist and really talk through all the anomalies together and make sure, you know, because there's a whole lot of things when you're swept up in it, it would be easy to be like, oh yeah, this is amazing, what fun, let's go on an adventure, which is our natural disposition. But then it's like, well, what if, you know, the baby has Down syndrome or blah, 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 blah. Like, so they kind of bring you back down to earth and you kind of go, oh yeah, are we all on the same page? Which we were. And then you do separate psychology sessions, I think all four of us, and then we all filled out a psych questionnaire just to make sure, you know, so there's quite a few hoops to jump through in terms of making sure that our mindsets were actually stable and that we were all aligned, and which is a really great thing, because so many times Stephen and I have gone, oh my gosh, like Sarah the entire time was and is the most incredible angel we could ever imagine in a million zillion years. But we've looked back and gone, oh my gosh, when that happened, imagine if it was someone else, because Sarah was literally having to go to so many different appointments and so many, like there's so much involved. And then there's the legal aspect where we both need to have separate lawyers draw up contracts that, you know, go through every sort of everything in there. So there's a lot of paperwork which bores me to tears, and I stepped out of. Sarah and Stephen did a lot of that, because I was like, you know what, my body has not been my own. I've injected myself like 480 times or something crazy I worked out. So I was like, Stephen, do with it what you will, but you need to take on the paperwork side, because I just need to enjoy the journey. So Sarah's much more detail orientated, clear next steps than me, so she could probably talk through those bits.
Absolutely amazing.
Oh, the paperwork is boring. We won't bother with that, but it was extensive, especially after he was born, because when he was born, he was registered as myself and my husband as his parents. So there's a whole legal process to get that birth certificate revoked and get a new parentage order that happens with Lisa and Stephen as the parents. But as well as all of that, there's a whole process that happened with my body as well to make sure that I was a hospitable environment. So we had to, I had to have a number of tests. There's one, I think it's called a hycosi, where they inflate your uterus and just make sure there's no issues there, that there's no polyps, and that it's a good environment to put this precious embryo into, because Lisa and Stephen only had 6. So I was very aware we had six shots to do this. So I had heaps of tests. Like probably for about 3 months, I was having constant scans and blood tests and things. Then for anyone who's gone through IVF knows how physical that process is. It's a lot of hormone injections and constant blood tests. So it was a lot of physical getting ready, as well as all of the psychology stuff, which was very big at the beginning, but they kind of like gave us this psychological profile and then went, okay, great, you're approved. And then we didn't really hear from them until after he was born again. So I feel like that area could have done with some more support. Luckily, we're the type of people that we're very into therapy and growth and everything ourselves. So we did our own work there, but I think for other people, make sure you've got a bit of psychological support along the way, because it's a big thing to go through. So yeah, there's a lot of steps. There's physical steps, there's legal steps, and then there's also, I forgot to mention too, for Lisa, it's having a surrogate is not a choice you just get to make. Like Lisa had to jump through quite a few hoops to prove, hey, I've done this, 16 times. I've really tried to have this baby myself and it's not working. So in Australia, the rules are really strict. You cannot do it for financial gain. You cannot do it just because, a woman says, I don't want to get pregnant. I find it whenever you see that sometimes online in comments and stuff where people go, oh, she just, particularly with celebrities, oh, she just didn't want to be pregnant herself and outsourced it. And I'm like, oh, no one chooses to add all of this like drama and stress and paperwork and legalities and money and all of that. No one would choose that if they could do it the traditional way. But being that this was the way that we could get Lisa a baby, we just dove into it with the best positive attitude we could, and like we were just laser focused on the goal. Let's get a baby, and it happened.
I might just
Oh my God, you really are a real life angel.
I might just add a couple of things in there, because I know we've focused a lot on the complexities of the paperwork and everything. What I will say is the journey for me, having Sarah carry Hugo, was just like the most incredible 9 months, I'd say almost, of my life, and also now looking back, I mean, it's always nice retrospectively, but I would not choose any other way to have had Hugo, because after doing 16 rounds of IVF myself, it was a pretty lonely journey for multiple reasons. But actually it was like having a best friend carrying a baby and like talking every day and being like, oh my God, how are you going? And then like doing all these things together. So it was very much, we were in it. I mean, for 9 months, there's not a day where we wouldn't have talked, FaceTimed, been together, whatever. So like I miss that, and I wish we could carry 10 more babies together. It was so fabulous. And the second point on all of that, which I think is really important to talk about, is that I don't take it lightly that we were able to afford to do this, because I know that so many people, really can't, and we were in a very fortunate position. And there was a point when I was having a meltdown, as I did quite a lot of times behind the scenes, because it takes a massive, physical, emotional, mental, financial toll going through that much IVF for that long. And I said to Stephen, this is just so horrible. And he said to me, it doesn't matter if having a baby costs $1 or $1 million. Like, if this is our goal, then we just do it. And we did. We sold our family home. I mean, we really sacrificed everything financially, and we're in a fairly large hole now that we're gradually digging out of. Luckily, we know how to make money. But I mean, I think that I don't take it lightly. And I did a speaking gig recently in Griffith, and a woman came up to me and was like, I'm so inspired and it's so amazing. And then she said to me, my husband and I saved money for 10 years just to do 1 round of IVF. And so her and I just were like bawling, and she had a baby with her 1 round and now has a 5-year-old. And I was just like, oh my God, how beautiful. So I never take for granted the privilege that we are in, that we were able to go through so much to get Hugo. And the kid is at work now because he's got a lot to pay off now.
He does. And you know what? This is so beautiful for him that this is all documented as well. He'll be able to really listen to these types of podcasts that you guys are on, read the book when he's older, and really be able to fully understand what it took to get him and how special he really, really is. It's beautiful.
I hope so. And I think we think a lot, and certainly Stephen and I talk a lot about, and Sarah has been part of those conversations as well, like, is every step of what we're doing the right thing by him and for him in the long term? And I think the beautiful thing is, and Sarah introduced me to the term and we use it all the time, chosen family. And absolutely, they are our chosen family without a doubt. And I think it is a beautiful story, particularly in the day and age that we live in now, that there are so many different ways to have a family, and it looks like so many different things. And so I think it's fortunate that 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 Hugo will this is just how he was brought into the world, and it's amazing and to be celebrated.
Love it. Now, Hugo's recently turned 1, like we said, and I saw you posted a couple of days ago, I think it was, that you were finally the legal parents and you got that signed off and you were celebrating that and you were talking about the parentage order.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that and what it is and the process afterwards to get that to happen? Because you were pretty chuffed in that celebration on that post, which I totally understand. And you, I think, mentioned it wasn't, as easy as seamless as what people would expect.
Yeah, so that I have trained myself to compartmentalize things. And so I think, from the moment that Hugo was inserted into Sarah, I have always, and since we knew we were pregnant, he's always been my baby unquestionably. And it's the weirdest thing. Like, I just look at him and he looks exactly like my baby photos. And I'm just like, there's no question ever that he is, my child, even though Sarah carried him. So I think it was a year and a bit before we actually had, a legal birth certificate with us as listed as the parents. And that meant a whole lot of things. When we went to the doctor with him to get his vaccinations, we didn't have a Medicare card. We still don't, to be honest. So there's been a whole lot of stuff, but I think I compartmentalized and was just like, that just didn't exist. So Stephen has looked after, again, a lot of that paperwork and things. So when I celebrated, I just took it into the moment and I was like, wow. But I think I never even questioned that Sarah and David were still on the birth certificate and things. I didn't let myself go there. Sarah probably can talk more about the legalities because I just am like, no, I don't want to know about it. But it's a lot. And it does bring up questions. When we went to enroll him in childcare for next year and things like that, they're always like, can you attach the birth certificate? Like, so there are little moments where you're like, oh, how do I even explain this? Like,
Just send them your Instagram link.
Yeah.
Watch this, guys.
Yeah, here is the journey. Here's the book that I prepared earlier. But I mean, not everyone gets that, right? And so you could send something through and then it's like Sarah and David are legally his parents still, and people are like, why are you enrolling this child? Or you go to take him to the doctor and they're like, so everything for Medicare, we haven't got any Medicare. We've had to pay for everything since he was born because they're like, well, he doesn't have a Medicare card. So there's a lot of stuff like that. So I've tried to remove myself emotionally from all of that and just enjoy Hugo, really.
What I just realized is really weird there is that I did register his birth for Medicare and I was expecting them to send me out a card with him and I was going to give you that card to use, but they never did. But even from the moment he was born, Hugo was on my health insurance policy and we were very lucky that nothing ever happened. But if there had been a health event in that 14 or what was that, 12 months before he officially became yours, if something had happened and he had to go to hospital, like I probably would have had to be there, which just creates an extra layer of like, we've gone through so much. Lisa and Stephen have gone through so much to get this child. Like, how annoying at the end that there's just this tiny extra step in the process. I feel like in the 9 months of pregnancy, there's a lot that could happen to make sure that when the baby's born, it just is legally registered to its rightful parents. Seems like an unnecessary step to make parents go through after all of that.
And it's what I will say is, for anyone who does know me, or I'm very like buck the status quo, finger to the establishment. Like, I'm very much like that. So like after Hugo had turned 1, I think it was a week or so after, Sarah and I and Stephen had to sit online with was it the Supreme Court, Sarah? Like, it was the highest of the high.
Yeah, I can't remember which one.
With a white-haired judge who was a million years old, who clearly from a different generation, is my point there, around his judgment, literally, sort of questioning me about, did you actually try to have a baby? Did you? And I'm like, hang on a minute, this does not add up, because Hugo is over 1 year old. This man is sitting there still judging me. And I'm like, is there establishment, is it so out of date? Like, what if he had have said, actually, no, you're not
Mm,
Hugo's mum? What would he have gone back to Sarah? Like, it was just, there are a
mm,
lot of things that seem very outdated and quite frankly out of order. Like, that would have been a conversation to have probably before we decided to get pregnant, or before Hugo was born. So there's a lot of things like that, and it took every bit of me in that meeting not to just be like, are you fucking serious? Like, but you just have to roll with it. And also, what I will say to that is, and Sarah and I had a similar thought when our fathers passed away. It's like, oh, we'll write a book about this, because as well, like, things like death are very, like, the legals and the everything to follow. We both had separately, we didn't know, had thoughts about, do we write a book about this to shed light on it, and a bit about the surrogacy or the IVF journey and all of that. That could be a whole separate, but I'm like, choose what you want to tackle in life. Like, we're bringing the story in a really positive, beautiful way, but certainly there does need to be a bit of a shake up about the establishment in many aspects of life, I think.
And no doubt you two powerhouses will make that happen. The Power of Two book is coming out late October, so very soon from the time we are recording this.
Yes.
So we'll pop the link to the book in the show notes of this podcast for anyone listening who wants to get their hands on it. I will be one of those. I want to know how well you know each other. I was sitting around a dinner table the other night, just before we wrap up, and we were having what would be your last drink? What would be your last entree? What would be your last main, last dessert? And who would it be with? So I'm going to ask you, Sarah, to
mhm.
answer what you think Lisa would say to those questions, because I want to see how well you two know each other.
Okay. All right. Ask them
All right.
again. I
All
wasn't
right. What do you think Lisa's last drink would be?
iced coffee.
Yes.
Just go on in a hand. Last entree.
Is that like, so it's entree, then main, and then dessert, right?
No, you got it.
Okay. I reckon like Lisa's whole meal would be lots of really fresh, like lots of veggies, maybe like a grilled fish, some sort of like it would be all really fresh and tasty. Lisa's a really good cook, so she'd probably make it herself. um so it'd be really like it'd be a lovely, maybe like a beautiful salad to start with, and then maybe some fish or chicken or something with some roast veggies, something really delicious and flavorful.
Is she right, Lisa?
She's absolutely right, except since I've had Hugo, I feel like I've slipped into like a bit of the not healthy, but normally, I mean, I can't blame Hugo. I'm just blame myself for getting out of my routines a bit. But yeah,
Oh,
she's
and like I think you now fully understand, like it's not a choice. Some days you don't, there is no choice. It's like
yeah.
wheat bix for dinner because that's all we can
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Last dessert, Sarah? What would be your last dessert?
Oh, you're not as much of a sweet tooth as I am. Like sometimes I think you would even skip dessert if you're, if you're not that, if you're kind of on a health kick or you're not that into it. But otherwise, maybe a bit of Toblerone or something, a little bit of Chucky.
Yeah, I love a bit
And
of
who would this dish, this meal be with?
Hugo.
Yeah, of
I
course.
don't think you'll skip any meals with Hugo at the moment.
no,
Probably
never.
till he's 18, till he's 25.
I know.
All right, let's flip it. Lisa, how well do you know Sarah? What would be her last drink?
Oh my God. Well, I'm just laughing because um because we're doing like a bit of a bougie Sydney launch in a few weeks, and there was no alcohol included in the lunch, and Sarah's like, oh no, but we all need to. So I think it'll be some kind of beautiful cocktail, but it will be very pretty. It'll have like little beautiful things around it, and she'll be wearing a gorgeous pink dress, and it'll probably be Mr. Zimmy, and everything would be just perfect.
I could picture it. She right.
Very,
I do love an open bar. And
yeah.
I do enjoy a cocktail, but I'm also a really simple girl. I love champagne. It's my favorite. A glass of champagne is just like the perfect way to end a week for me.
But
Yeah.
also just it's not just the drink, it's the whole demeanor around it. Like, I'm very much a barefoot sneakers kind of a girl. Sarah's always like looks gorgeous and has her beautiful champagne or her beautiful drink, and everything's just like, just so.
Yeah.
I love this. Love it. All right. Last entree and main.
Well, I mean, sorry, there's always stories that go with all of this.
I love the stories. This is good.
Because for much of the pregnancy, and we shared many, many, many meals together. Unfortunately, a lot of times was like me eating something and then Sarah like being like, "Oh, excuse me," and running to the bathroom having something sick. So, but Sarah does love a bit of, you like the finer things. I think the entrees, she'd like a nice cheese platter to go with her champagne and things.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
but she does like the odd burger and sort of nachos and these kind of things. But you also love, what is your favorite? I'm trying to think. I'm going back to all the things through pregnancy, the spag bowls and all the things that we were cooking.
Yeah, and that was hard because I also had gestational diabetes, so I had to cut out on a lot of the things I love.
Yeah.
Everything you've always cooked for me, like the big, beautiful big salads and pastas and yeah, lovely fresh food. I love all of that.
Yeah, she does indeed. I go to the burgers because Sarah, a little known thing about Sarah is that they actually owned a burger joint for a few years because she couldn't take on anything else. She had to be an incredible, had her full-time job
Well done,
and
Sarah.
that.
You guys are making me hungry. What would be her last dessert? Last dessert.
Last dessert. I'm trying to think. Well, I just think about things that I've cooked. I think you were quite partial to the, what did I make? Like a caramel kind of mud cake thing. And they were all like, oh, we'll have a bit more of that, a bit more of that. I think
Anything with caramel will take seconds.
you do have a nice sweet tooth around all of that. So yeah.
I do.
And who would her meal be with?
Who would her meal be with? I think probably David and the three kids, definitely Casey and Dion and Summer. And I'd like to think that I was there as well.
No.
Sounds lovely. Let's book it in.
Chosen family. Love it. All right. So we're going to end this conversation with the question I ask everyone on the end of every episode. So based off the title of this podcast, Sarah, I'll start with you. What's something that you once heard that you could not unhear and that made you see the world differently in some way?
Yeah. Yes. I heard this probably about 10 years ago, but I fully absorbed it and understood it and lived with it about 6 years ago. And that is other people's opinion of you is none of your business. If you fully live in that, it just allows you so much freedom to live your life however you want. And it's not that I don't hear other people's opinions or that I'm not affected by it or it doesn't hurt my feelings, but I've just learned that if I hear something rude or mean or that is unpleasant towards me, I can just process it really quickly and just immediately go, oh, who is that person? Do I need to worry about their opinion of me? Probably not. And file it away and just move on with my day. And that has literally transformed my life because it means I can do things and say things. I can speak up in meetings at work. I can have hard conversations. I can offer to be a surrogate. I can do lots of things without overthinking it or worrying about what the other person might say or think or feel. And I think that it's on other people to come to me if they've got an issue with something I've said or done. And then I'm really happy to work through it, but I'm not going to overthink in my brain the thousands of ways they might have interpreted it. So that to me has been so freeing in life.
Powerful. And it's literally what I said to my nearly 13-year-old a couple of days ago.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Amazing. Yeah. Lisa, what's your things you can't unhear moment?
Yeah, and just on that, I'm just going to say, I'm hoping that Sarah, after this book, The Power of Two, has multiple books of her own because she's so selflessly edited so many of mine and other people's over the years. And she has so much wisdom, like we have just heard, and also is just a phenomenal human. So I'm hoping to see lots of more. Okay. In the context of this podcast, what I can't unhear would be when Sarah said, if you're ever looking for a surrogate, because I think, and we punctuate this in the book, there's a saying that goes, who would take a bullet for you? We've actually flipped that and we now say, which I think is a really important question for people to postulate over, is who would carry your baby for you? And I think it's just something that's really changed our lives in terms of really just looking at, who are those people in your life that you may be close to, or you may not even yet know that something extraordinary will happen. And when we go back to our meeting in 2011, in that moment when Sarah came to meet with me about doing a first editing job for me, how could we have ever known then that, A, she would carry my baby, B, she would be, forever an auntie, godmother to Hugo and chosen family for me. And so I think it's just something that we want to leave everyone with, like, who would carry your baby for you, or who would be your ride or die, and I think it's really important to really think about.
Oh, you've got us all thinking now, no doubt. Who would carry your baby for you? What a perfect, perfect sentiment to end on. Ladies, I love everything about both of you. You're very, very inspiring. Yeah, you're right, Lisa. Sarah's an angel in disguise. You are very, very lucky to have each other. And of course, Hugo. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
So great.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.